For more, let's bring in our panel tonight. Radio talk show host, nationally syndicated, Stephanie Miller. Also, Washington Post columnist, E.J. Dionne, and Republican strategist John Feehery back with us tonight. Stephanie, nice to see you here in the Big Apple.
Good to see you.
From Los Angeles. Karl Rove back in the news, giving us some entertainment. Now, don't lefties really want the Democrats to go after him full boat and caboodle on this?
I think one thing every time I see him on TV, Ed, and that is he's not in prison. Why? Same thing I think when I see Tom DeLay on television asking for the president's gift certificate, which was my favorite moment yesterday.
So, as we look at what Rove is involved in right now, what do you make of his tactic? What do you make? He is coming out. A congressman just said he's lying about it, and he of course is writing in defense that any fair-minded person would know that he's innocent.
Yeah.
What do you make of all that?
Well, Karl Rove lying strikes me as that's news from the Department of No Blank Sherlock. I'm not sure what he's ever said that's true. So, this is what they're doing on healthcare, Ed. It's just, if they say it, they think that it must be true, and it's just one lie after another. E.J.
Dionne, is Karl Rove. What do you make of this? And does this heighten the intensity for the Democrats to do something about it? He's basically throwing down the gauntlet, isn't he?
Well, I think it depends, as another president might have put it, it depends on what the meaning of the words fair-minded is. And I think it is very, it's a kind of politics Karl Rove is good at, which is you do go on the offensive. You don't play defense if you can possibly help it. And what he was trying to do, it was a very interesting document, that piece, because what he was trying to do is take the things that people have said he did to politicize the Justice Department, and he really just went after David Iglesias. He kind of twisted it around to say, not that Iglesias wouldn't bring lawsuits, bring cases the Republicans wanted him to bring, but that he was too afraid to bring those suits because he might run for office and might offend Democrats. That's actually saying the same things his critics have said he did, but spinning it around the other way.
John Feehery, what's this strategy about for Karl Rove?
Well, I think Karl has a right to get his side of the story out there. I like Karl Rove. I know him. I don't know him well, but I like him. And I disagree with everything everyone else has said. I think Karl Rove is a very straightforward guy, and I don't believe that he was trying to railroad Don Singelman. I don't believe that. So, I think that there's a disagreement here, and I think that there's always two ways to look at a set of facts. And Karl Rove has his point of view, and he's perfectly willing and has a right to get his side of the story out there.
Well, White House counsel Harriet Miers, this was her comment in testimony to the Judiciary Committee. My best recollection is that Rove was very agitated about the U.S. Attorney in New Mexico. It was clear to me that he felt like he had a serious problem and that he wanted something done about it. He was just upset. I remember him being very upset. John, what about that?
Well,
that shows that he was involved, doesn't it?
I would look at this from a different perspective than you all. I think that Rove has a perfectly valid right to put out his side of the story, and that's what he's doing. And I think it's a good strategy on his part.
Okay, let's talk about.
You know what, Ed? I just want to make a point here, real quick. What's interesting about the Rove piece, not on the Singelman point, but on the Iglesias thing, he is really acknowledging that he did play a role in that, and he's not denying what the Democrats were saying. He's just putting an entirely different spin on it to say, I thought I was doing the right thing. But it's right there in the piece that he really cared a lot about what Iglesias was doing.
Stephanie, do you think it's just coming down to the point he's just trying to make sure he's got Joe the plumber on his side at this point?
That's all he's got left.
That's
Once again, the facts have a well-known liberal bias, Ed. You know how that is.
That's right. All right. Stay with us, panel. A lot more coming up. Let's bring our panel back tonight. Stephanie Miller, E.J. Dionne, and John Feehery. Stephanie, are we into the critical stage now? The president's going to have to fish or cut bait on public option. Eventually, isn't he going to have to tell the Republicans this is where we're going?
I think so too, Ed. I'm hoping that it's like that thing we've seen that, everybody chill out, I've got this. I'm hoping that's where the president is on this. And the Chuck Grassley, it'll end kind of like the Somali pirate crisis, just in a political sense for him, that he'll think things are going well, we're negotiating with him, and then it really won't end well for him.
And I hope that's the way it turns out. Yeah. All right, today's move. The president goes over to the DNC today to talk to the grassroots, the very people that got him in office. And it's interesting that the president that has been so strong, the the candidate in contemporary time that's been so strong, brought in new ways to campaign. The social networking seems to, in the last several weeks, shake the base a little bit. They really weren't sure where he stood on things. So I think today's move over to the DNC was very strategic. Every Democrat in this country wants to know, is that the way he talks to Charles Grassley behind closed doors?
Also, everybody wants to know, I was talking to a healthcare activist who asked if we needed an intervention in this seeming almost abusive relationship between Senator Baucus and Senator Grassley. I mean, that's been a very weird negotiation, but that looked like the old Obama. I think they made a couple of mistakes this week where I think people are genuinely confused about where they are and also confused about what's in this bill. You know, on the Sunday, they seemed to signal that they're willing to drop the public plan. Then the next day, they said, no, we didn't mean that. New York Times story, which they seem to be behind, saying, we're going to drop the Republicans, we're going to do it all Democrat. Next day, saying, no, we're going to be bipartisan. I think this has been an administration known for message discipline and all that, and I just don't think you've seen it on this issue. And I think the one good thing that's been happening is the conservative side mobilized earlier on this. They did, I don't like people disrupting speakers, but they were showing up at those town meetings. And it wasn't until the last week that you really started seeing progressives get out there and start showing up in strength. So you're finally having a mobilization on the other side that's visible.
John Feary, how are independents supposed to view this when the president is solidifying his base on a public option and Grassley and some other Republicans, Orrin Hatch, are saying, well, it's not going to be real reform unless we have 70 or 80 votes in the Senate, and that's the only way we can get this done. But it just seems that the Republicans right now are stuck in the mud, and they won't move. Is this a strategy that they're going to play out to the very end?
Well, Ed, I disagree with that. I do agree with EJ. I think EJ is right about the communications failures of this White House. They've been all over the place, and that's very confusing for people out in the country.
But what about Grassley, John?
I would say, let me say, to answer your first question, Ed, about independent voters. If you look at the polls, they're turning against this plan. It's really not just about health care either. It's about a wide variety of things, especially spending, and they're concerned about really the country going into big debt. And that's one of the things that's driving independents against this plan, which would behoove the president, and why Rahm Emanuel and other White House officials want to cut a bipartisan deal.
But John,
because vulnerable Democrats are the ones who are driving this process, not the liberal base, and not really Republicans. It's moderate Democrats who are driving it.
I think
that's the big problem for the White House.
The president needs to know the liberals are still driving the bus here, and if he's going to ride to the midterm, he's got to get a public option. But I want you to respond to the president has got olive branches pouring out of the windows of the White House, and you got Grassley and Orrin Hatch drawing a new line of the sand, and they say no public option. What are you supposed to do with those guys?
Ed, let me ask you a question. If Chuck Grassley and Orrin Hatch both supported a public option, they'd have primary opponents against them, and they'd lose. They would. They do not. They would. They would have primary opponents, and they would lose. No, that's not true.
John, they would be able to go home. They'd be able to go home.
I know the Republican primary voters better than you do, and let me tell you, they would lose the primary vote.
I know people without health insurance in those states that they represent.
Don't vote in the Republican primary.
And I guarantee you, if they go home and tell their constituents, you're not going to have a pre-existing condition, those veteran senators would absolutely walk right to re-election. Stephanie, your thoughts?
I mean, absolutely. And you look at the polls. I mean, the problem is, and you've said this many times, Americans largely want health care reform. Originally, they want exactly what the president's plan is. The problem we've had is they're starting to believe all these right-wing lies. We still have time to take this debate back. And Politico reported today that the White House is also swayed by, they called them their powerful talk show allies. And you know who we're talking about, Ed. You and me. You and me.
Absolutely. We're the allies. EJ, you and I have touched on this months ago, but I think the intensity of it is really there now. If the president doesn't deliver public option to Ohio, to Indiana, and to Michigan, what's it going to look like in the midterm where unemployment is starting to go up? What do you think?
Well, I just want to pick up on something our Republican friend said when he said that the people in our primaries aren't the ones who don't have health insurance. And that really does tell you a lot about why this debate has has shaken down the way it has, that there are an awful lot of Republican senators and House members who just don't have any particular interest politically in extending health insurance. And that's why this has become, one of the reasons why this has become a very partisan fight.
Absolutely.
On the public option. Oh, go ahead.
We're out of time here. We're going to have you back talking more about it, and I appreciate all of you being here tonight. Earlier in the show, I asked you what you thought. Should the president continue to work for a bipartisan agreement? 8% of you said yes. 92% of you said no. Jon Stewart, I want coverage on that one, too. That's The Ed Show. I'm Ed Shultz. For more information on The Ed Show, go to ed.msnbc.com or check out wegoted.com. Chris Matthews coming up next right here on MSNBC with Hardball. We're back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern, right here.